I, sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit.
I was a former slave, a reincarnated slave.
By the end of the Almighty,
seeing what those people actually experienced so many years back, it's terrible.
Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom?
It's really like something that a human being should not go through.
Redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time.
Badagry is a coastal town and local government area in Lagos State, Nigeria. It was founded in the early 15th century on a lagoon off the Gulf of Guinea. Then, its inhabitants lived along the coast of Berefu, which later gave birth to the town. It is bordered on the south by the Gulf of Guinea and surrounded by creeks, islands, and a lake. Badagry is a few kilometers from Seme, a border town to the Republic of Benin. The town subsists largely on fishing and agriculture and maintains a small museum of slavery. It is one of the 5 divisions created in Lagos State in 1968, and today it is the second largest commercial town in Nigeria's economic heartbeat. Its major residents are the Aworis, Egun, and some from the neighboring Republic of Benin. Its protected harbor led to the town becoming a key port in the export of slaves to the Americas in the 1500s. It was also a big departure point for slaves headed for Haiti. Every part of Badagry has an interesting historic twist to it. The town showcases an exciting blend of incredible art, momentous history, and amazing town lifestyle. The beachfronts are exciting for tourists, but any visit to the town without a time out at the slave museums is considered incomplete. Today, Inside Lagos Cruise set out on an adventure. We want to explore the story of the dangerous journey of no return that African slaves were subjected to from the slave port in Badagry to the lagoon where ships waited to ship them to unknown destinations. It was a bumpy ride along the Lagos-Badagry Expressway. We were shocked to see this car. Amazingly, with 3 tires on 4 wheels, this car passed 2 checkpoints mounted by the Federal Road Safety Corps officials, and it was not stopped. But little did we know that there were funnier looking vehicles for a camera lens to film. We met our tour guide, Akintunde Ayeni, and together we set out on a journey of discovery. This road leads to Seriki Abbas' Brazilian Barracão. Barracão is a Portuguese word for a jail or cell. It was built by Brazilian slave merchants in 1840 and handed over to their black agent, Chief Seriki Williams Abbas, who was also once a slave boy. These paintings shows the horror that many black slaves went through in the hands of their slave masters. Behind this wall is Seriki Abbas Slave Museum. The museum contains artifacts and relics from the darkest era in the history of mankind. 40 slave cells used to be here. Slaves waited hopelessly in these cells, not knowing what fate awaited them. Apart from the color of their skin, they were united by their powerlessness and their afflictions. Today, this barracoon offers great insight into the trembling exchange rate mechanism of the past. This umbrella was acquired by Chief Seriki in exchange for 40 slaves. 40 human beings, someone's father, mother, uncle, aunt, or friends were sold into slavery for a piece of umbrella. History also shows that a cannon gun exchanged for 100 slaves, a bottle of gin exchanged for 10 slaves, a Dane gun exchanged for 40 slaves, ceramic pot, plate, 10 slaves, and a mirror was negotiable. Every artwork in this museum tells a story of sorrow and blood. The all-powerful slave merchant, Chief Seriki Abbas, died in 1919. But how were slaves taken out from Chief Seriki Abbas' barracoon and shipped to unknown destinations? The story starts from this point, the slave port at the Lagos Port Novo Lagoon, right opposite Chief Seriki Abbas' barracoon. We joined a few enthusiasts who were seeking to know how their ancestors were maltreated. Even a Japanese was keen on the slave history. Our tour guides were quick to take us through safety talks, but I imagined the slaves had no such opportunity. Tired, thirsty, no life jackets, and with chains on their legs, hands, and necks. I imagined they were crammed into a waiting canoe, and the strongest of them all pushed the canoe to sail away. It was an intolerable continuation of torture and abuse.
It was as terrible as that. There's nothing we could tell you about the experiences of the slaves that could actually be like what the slaves experienced that time.
As the speedboat cruised off the shore, emotion started running deep within me. Every inch away was a sad departure from the black route. It was difficult to imagine what goes through a slave's mind at this point. For us, it was an adventure, but for the slaves captured in the hinterlands, it was an inch away from hell. It was indeed a journey of no return.
Okay, how many minutes journey, please?
It's about 4 minutes.
Okay,
to the point.
minutes.
4 or 5
okay,
minutes.
4 minutes
on the water.
On this water.
The journey is short, but the story is endless. In 4 minutes, we got to the dock. I got help to get off the boat. But imagine what a female slave needing help like me would have got. This is Berefo Island. Until the slave trade, this island was home to many black Africans whose occupation was predominantly farming.
This island played a major role in the history of the contact between Nigeria, Europe, and the Americas. It was a major slave outpost and market during the centuries of slave trade, and this point is the route of the journey to a unknown destination.
This particular part, we call it the slave route. Slaves walked on this particular route for about 300 years. When you walk on this route, you are making history. And as you walk on the route, you begin to imagine the experiences of the ancestors. The chains, sunlight will equally make it very, very hot. So the chains were hot, the sun is very hot, and they're not putting on any shoes. And as they are walking on the slave route, one of them may fall and die. If such happen, if they have enough time, they will unchain another slave who will dig the ground to bury such a person.
Between the early 1500 and 1787, no fewer than 550,000 African slaves passed through this island to America, Europe, South Africa, and the Caribbean. As the journey continued, we decided to switch roles. I mounted this horse to imagine what a slave merchant felt when he was marching his merchandise through the island. I imagine a slave boy falling by the roadside and getting whipped by the stern-looking guard. I imagine how it was humanly possible for a human being to watch a fellow creature undergo the horror and injustice that happened here. Halfway into the island, we finally had the chance to drink water. But what was supposed to be a relief was an invention to aggravate the sufferings of the already humbled slaves.
A long time ago, during the slave trade, look, you can see the palm trees over there. As soon as the slaves get around here, they sit them down on the other side, and the overseer, now the person in charge of the slaves was referred to as the overseer. The overseer will come and fetch water from the well, give to the slaves to drink. As soon as they drink the water, they lose their memory, they become weak. Some people say the water was not charmed. Some said the water was charmed. Some people say the water was drugged, either charmed or drugged. It was to fulfill an objective, and it was to make them weak, forget about home. You can see it's obvious that nobody is fetching water from the well. Some say the power is still there, some say the power is no more there. But the question we should ask ourselves is this: why did they dig the well? Why did they add either the charm or the drug into the water? It was because on a slave ship, depending on the size of the ship, a ship could carry 200 slaves, a ship could carry 400, depending on the size of the ship. Now, if we have 200 slaves on a ship, and we have, now most times the Europeans are between 10 and 15. Okay, imagine we have 15 people on a ship, we have 15 people on a ship, 15 Europeans on the ship, and we have 200 slaves. By the time the ship gets to the deep sea, the enslaved ones could use their number to revolt. They could fight back. So to prevent that from happening, because they always dread a revolt, they always dread a slave revolt. So especially on a ship, they don't want that to happen. So they give them water from the well to drink. Now we have the well here in Badagry that I call Well of Memory Loss. But in a place called, there's a place called Wida in Benin Republic. What they had was not a well, theirs was a tree. They make the men go around the tree 9 times. The women will go around the tree 7 times with the same objective.
And make them weak.
They make them forget about home, make them weak, not being able to think straight. It's not an ordinary tree. It's the same mindset. When you go to some other places, like in Togo, you go to Ghana, you go to some villages, they have similar stories. It shows the spirit of man. It shows that the spirit of man is strong. The spirit of those that were enslaved that time were equally very, very strong.
Let me have a look at them.
Okay, oh, you want to drink some?
No. I'm not interested in that.
Okay.
Wow, the water is still there.
It's there. You can see that it's nearly filled to the brim.
No one would walk through this island without appreciating the value of freedom. The stories here are humbling.
Yeah, maybe probably they have a relationship with the whites, so that they can use it to charm them, so that they can forget. Yeah.
It's a collaboration.
Yes.
You understand? It was a collaboration.
So our leaders then.
Now the question is, who dug the well? Now they said the water was charmed. Some said the water was drugged. If the water was charmed, they said the people who did it are from here. If the water was drugged, they said the people who did it were the Europeans. But you can see that even now, nobody is fetching water from the well. Some people believe that the power is still there. Some say the power is no more there.
Nobody can try it now.
That is why you are going to be trying it now.
Who will try it?
You will be trying it. But you see, even at the time, on this island, children throw dirt, they throw stones at the well because they are not happy about that past.
Yeah.
They are not happy about the history. Either we like it or not, what we are talking about is our past. History is for us to learn from. so that we don't continue to make the same old mistakes. And when you study the history of the world, you realize that other continents are learning.
My producer couldn't suppress the questions running through his mind.
The mirror that we see today, that some of our
Forefathers
are former forefathers. I hate to call them forefathers. Actually exchanged 35 human beings for an article, for a mirror. How would you describe those forefathers? I mean, not the slaves, but the people who sold their people. 35 lives, 35 human lives to exchange for a mirror. How would you describe them?
Now, I'm not disputing what you said now, but I think 35 human beings is too much for a mirror. Although there are items, there are human beings used in exchange for items. Okay, like here in Badagry, like at the Seriki Abba Slave Museum, they have a bottle inside the museum. The value of the bottle of gin was 10 human beings. The big cannon gun, 100 slaves.
The adventure continued, but with controversies about the mystery well.
When you drink this water, you lose your memory.
Was it so powerful that it made slaves to forget their past? Or was it just post-traumatic stress and psychology playing out?
That person that when they drank the water and
lost his memory, yeah.
But why was it? Why was there was a turn around the tree? Why?
You wear them out. I think that's more of wearing people out. Because you don't know how
somebody that walking that long.
No, don't forget. You have 40 people chained together.
Yes, chained together.
More.
But that doesn't make them lose memory. They might lose.
Now we're approaching the final destination. Any slave that made it up to this point had only begun another journey of affliction. Slaves passed through this ark to board the waiting ships of European slave merchants.
We call it the ark. Originally, the two poles to my left and the right was what used to be here a long time ago. But the government of Lagos State came up with an idea to build what looks like a rigmarole. You go in, okay, you go around it, and there's a step at the extreme end over there. And you can see that there are glasses in between the structure that I call see-through. Through it, you can view the whole environment and look further at sea. But the significance of these two poles originally was for us to still take cognizance of the slave route from the jetty on the other side. Okay? Because from the jetty on the other side, the slave route, the path was directly through here. So for us to still take that into cognizance was the essence of these two poles, because at the other side is the Atlantic Ocean. Now that time, once the slaves get here, don't forget that majority of them were captured from the hinterland. So as soon as they get here, a lot of them went through a lot of psychological trauma because they have never seen, most of them have never seen water as big as this before. And they saw a very huge animal in the sea. What's the animal? The big sheep. And they were taking them in bashes into the ship. So at first they thought they were feeding them to the animal in the water. They were feeding them to the sheep until they themselves get there to understand or realize that it was a form of transportation. So they call this island the point of no return. Journey to unknown destinations, because once those they were enslaved enter into the ship takes them away, and they don't know where the ship will take them to. That's why they call this island the point of no return. But locally, it's called Berefu Island, here in Badagry.
From here, the slaves will be taken to where they will live without dignity and die like criminals.
This morning, I woke up in a curfew. Oh God, I was a prisoner too. Yeah, could not recognize the faces standing over me. They were all dressed in uniforms of brutality. Hey, how many
Right now, we are facing the Americas. North America to the right, Central America in between. If you check the map, just look at where we have Lagos, you realize that we are facing Central America and somewhere like we are facing like Brazil directly. So it's easy, you know, for them to just go straight down to the other side with those people they were taking away. Of course, it was not only Brazil that slaves were taken to, they were taken everywhere around the Americas, around the Caribbean island. And today, I tell people that we should make our own research and tell our own story.
The 400 years of pan-Atlantic slave trade constitutes the darkest history of mankind.
They were taken away from here. Now, the Spanish took them away, the Portuguese, the English, the Dutch,
different people.
And these European countries have different colonies in the Americas. And even when they get to some places, okay, even when, at the time it was becoming expensive to come and buy slaves from Africa. Like in places like maybe Trinidad and Tobago, there's what we call slave breeding. They breed slaves like you breed animals, okay? And on a plantation, they may select maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 men, and their duties every night or every day was to sleep with all the women. And the women become pregnant. Some of them will see children that looks like them, but they can't claim those children as their own because the child of a slave was a slave. So they breed on some plantations, and from there they take them to another colony, which may be different from where they're from. Okay, they take them. So the migration is very, very deep. It takes a lot of research work. Some were not even taken from here. Some were taken from other colonies in the Americas.
71 years old Joseph Olusegun Damelde is the great-grandchild of one of the slaves that returned to Badagry after the slave trade was abolished. His ancestors originally came from Togo, but they couldn't find their roots anymore. They have made Nigeria their home for more than a century now. Today, Pa Damelde says many people still trace their roots to their family.
I'm the Daudu of the Damelde family here at Gao there. Even though anybody come from that place, say want to get letter of anything.
Indigenship.
Indigenous. If High Chief Agoloto sign, he must look me to endorse it.
Seeing what those people actually experienced so many years back, it's terrible. I actually practicalized one of them, and I tasted just 0.1% of what they felt there, and it's quite terrible.
The infamous slave trade might have ended, but as the Jamaican reggae legend Bob Marley said, there were no chains around the feet of Africans. But Africans are still not free. They still struggle with poverty, disease, corruption, human rights abuse, starvation, and bad leadership. The problems today are not caused by foreigners, but slave merchants in the corridors of power in different African countries. Some have given up on their government and have returned to places like this to get answers from God.
The point of no return has become a prayer city of some sort for some people. Maybe they are praying never to experience what their forefathers experienced when they were shipped out of here to an unknown destination. And that's the package for today. Many thanks for watching. I'm Ade Doja. Salam Adeni. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall